Good. Alrighty. It is Tuesday, November 26th at 4 p.m. and we will call the park board to order, and we'll start with roll call.
Burns. Sandy.
Here.
Schaefer.
Yes.
Shipe.
Here.
Miller.
Yes. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And move on to the approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second on the agenda. Any discussion on the agenda?
I think one note, without Dave, we can cover half the fee schedule, but not the banner program.
Oh, the banner program, yeah. Very good.
We'll probably want to split part of that out, but we can still do the rest of it.
Otherwise, looks good. All right. Motion and a second with a little discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We have an agenda. Moving on to the consent calendar. A notice to the public, all matters listed are considered routine by the board and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless good cause is shown prior to the time the board votes on the motion to be adopted by roll call.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar consisting of the minutes, the disbursements, and the financial reports.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the consent calendar? Jesse, please call the roll.
Sandy.
Yes.
Schaefer.
Yes.
Shipe.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes, we have the consent calendar approved. Moving on to unfinished business, the approval of the J.C.'s Park lighting layout. Jesse, presenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a carryover from the last meeting. Park Board requested some more information on funding of the two options. So I included the restatement of the two options and our rough approximate estimate of the two options with the lighting. We did clarify with some of our finance group and BPU staff. There are two options. You could request capital funds from the long-term maintenance fund from the city council and pay for it lump sum. The other option would be to amortize the cost of the installation to the monthly billing for the park over the next 25 years, kind of similar to some of our other replacement projects. So staff is actually recommending that we run that option with amortizing the cost of the whichever option we elect over the next 25 years. Using option 2 per the comments that were received at the October 22nd Park Board meeting. And can answer questions.
Very good. Thank you, Jesse. Any questions for Jesse at all? Comments or concerns? Paul?
I had one question. The pleasure rink, is there plans for night use on that? And will those two lights next to the rink provide adequate lighting? If there is after dark, obviously after dark hours.
So they're placed in a manner that it should cast enough light throughout. Where the question might be is on the southern end of that rink. That far eastern might be a little bit less lit than maybe the western portion, but it should get pretty well lit. If you think those lights are, at least what we were pricing was the the new residential standard acorn light. And those standard are placed at the corner of an intersection and lighted a full intersection. So you can kind of get an idea of scale of how much light is cast through those. So it should get through a pretty good sizable area. It just may not be super bright on the end of that. If you wanted to get a lot more brightness, you'd want to install another light on the east side of that rink. But it depends on how much light you're looking for. The other option, you could do some supplemental lighting like we have over at Gregory, where you throw some like cafe string lighting up. You'd have to run an extension cord or something to power it, but.
Very good.
I have a question.
Kara?
I know I missed last meeting. I did look at the notes, but why weren't the lights included in the original budget?
So we just didn't include that part of the project, that as part of this project. We were more focused on the grading portion of that. It wasn't really something that we identified with the scope of WIDSEF.
Andrew?
I'm still confused about how we bill BPU or BPU bills us for services. So like I know with the splash pad, right, we talked about they charge us for water and then we receive a credit. is that the same for our electricity?
Yes, sir.
So we're actually not paying for them because they would credit it all back to us eventually?
We do all pay for it through our rates.
Through the, okay.
Essentially, we do receive the credit back at payment in lieu of taxes, but
Okay.
everybody does pay for the cost of the lights through rates. They don't come to us for free.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Mike.
I just would like to comment on the sports are, on the soccer field. So against the parking lot and the soccer field, I would recommend that we just look at the two lights between the pleasure rink and the soccer field, because I think if we're looking at 2 hours window of playtime from 8 to 10, so 2 hours of extended play when we have lights on that soccer field, I think we're always going to have enough lighting for the pleasure rink. But now for the soccer field, we may want to look at professional sports lighting and something a little bit more to really cast the light on there. Between the pleasure rink and the soccer, that's going to get some good lighting. And then if we really have a lot of programming, we could then get the other lighting on the other side. But that's just my personal preference regarding soccer play, because you really need to get it lit a little bit more than just a street light.
Thank you, Mike. Further questions, comments, or concerns for Jesse or Mike? I think I'm a little bit more inclined to not ask the council for usage of the long-term maintenance fund and to amortize the costs. And to Mike's point, yeah, if we have a lot more activity out there, maybe we can pursue further lighting options, because again, I mean, the usage of this park should not stretch deep into the late hours, but I suppose, and when we're looking into it, yeah, in the winter hours, it is going to be dark after 5:30, but the usage of it will likely be on the rink, because that's where the ice is and that's where the action's going to be. So I am more of a proponent of just having the lights between the field and the pleasure rink for cost-saving measures. Again, we will be reimbursed in a sense for these lights, but that would be the preference, my preference for now. So I would take on the for the funding purposes, I would amortize the costs, and then for the lighting options, I would do option one. Andrew.
I think I still like option 2 just for having some lighting in the parking lot, because we've had, I'll say, no good nicks there doing stuff where they think it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. Having it lit, I think it just makes it a little more visible. If BPD comes to lock up the warming house, they can see what's going on in the whole parking lot.
Sure.
Yeah, it's certainly not lighting the soccer field.
Right.
I think Mike's got it.
Oh, Mike, yes.
And to your point, Andrew, we could always upgrade those lights if we wanted to see programming extend, versus just a acorn light, a very generic street light. We could upgrade that. So good point, good option. And we could always, when we see programming going, we could always upgrade those. We did have just FYI, we met with BPU out there today, and they gave us some, input, and then they're going to give us a formal, price on that too. So just FYI.
Very good. Any other questions, comments, or concerns, leanings on the options?
Well, just again, because I feel like I wasn't here for the whole thing, but, so if we just do 2 lights, or we do 4, or whatever, but if we're planning to, think about soccer lighting, like Mike's saying, that's not really in our budget at this point. So, is that something we'll have to change, or, I mean, I feel like this should have been part of the, original planning, because it kind of is a big deal, to, have our park lit. So that's where I'm if we only have 2 lights, and it's, 4:30, I guess no one's out on the soccer field, but, still people might be there. I don't know. I feel like we need 4 or more. But if we don't have the money for that, that's where I'm struggling to
Well, I think for funding purposes, yeah, I mean, we're gonna amateurize. I think we're all in kind of discussion. If we're gonna pay for it, it's not gonna be out of long-term maintenance for this, because, I mean, it was part of the project. I think we just kind of overlooked that. Mike?
I think I also met with Chief Davis on another topic, regarding the cameras. And I think to everyone's point, I think he would appreciate some lighting over in the parking lot too.
Very good. Yes.
Kara, I think when we had planned this, it was more daytime summer use was the main goal, right? It's like so wet in the summer before this that it was not usable.
True.
And so the lighting would just be security in this time of year more than like the Y's not going to be out there,
Yeah.
6:30 in November playing soccer. And if they are, like, we'll look at that, cross that bridge when we get. I'd love that, but
Winter soccer. Sounds good. Yeah. Okay.
in Minnesota.
So, yeah, to you guys' points on vandalism and kind of park security, I certainly could easily lean toward option 2. That's certainly not an issue for me as well. It's kind of, I think, JD had a lot of contentious points about this the last time too, and the funding of the lighting, and I think if over 25 years we're going to just get this back, I don't think it's so much of an issue to request all 4, so trying to be more conservative is a little bit more out the window if we're just going to get the money back over 25 years, so. But
Just like people's safety, again, and you want them to be comfortable. I know Buffalo Hills, there's like no lights over there, and I don't even know what happens. It's my neighborhood. I'm like, I don't want to go back there when it's dark out, because it's like, what is happening in that in that
yeah, and
gazebo back there?
And that's
But-
to your point. Yeah, if you roll in on this park, I mean, you're going to have those 2 street lamps over the rink, but at pulling into JC's Park, it's going to be kind of pitch black as you enter in the winter hours. So, yeah, to your guys' point, yeah, I think having the lights up front will be really important. So, Andrew.
I would move to select option 2 and amortize the cost over 25 years.
Second.
Motion and the second. Further discussion on the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. We have a lighting thing. We'll move on to unfinished business B, the approval of the 2025 park fee, with the idea that part of the banner program will not be discussed this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we included the proposed fee schedule just as it was in the last meeting, so we didn't make any changes to that. I did include the 2 points that were of main discussion with the banner program, as well as the potential alternative fee for athletic field rental for tournaments if they do self-maintenance. So I kind of gave a breakdown of how we came up with the $75 per hour per field. So we gave a recommendation. One item that Mike and I had a discussion is from a staff perspective, we would like to recommend that going that route, we would recommend that having the flexibility to negotiate a lower rate rather than having a set rate. This gives us some flexibility depending on what the abilities of that group would be. We could some are going to be a little bit more better suited than others. That might give us a little bit better flexibility in that realm. And we do have a little bit of that verbiage elsewhere in the fee schedule that we could enter into a separate agreement. We could have some of that verbiage elsewhere is that we could enter into a separate agreement for self-maintenance on those fields at a lower rate based on an agreement with staff. So if that's something that the park board wanted to do is allow that, that is something. But I wanted to make sure I pointed out the breakdown of the rates there. And then I just wanted to note the banner program. This is the first year that I'm including the banner program in the fee schedule. It doesn't need to be. In my mind, I thought anything that people are paying fees for, it's nice to have it on the fee schedule so that, one, the park board sees it and is approving of all this stuff. It doesn't have to be. This would be the first year that I've even included in it. So if you want to pull this out and discuss the rest of the fee schedule, and then at a future time, the banner program can have a different discussion, that's more than easy for us to do.
Very good. Thank you, Jesse. Questions, comments, or concerns on the fee schedule? as it sits. Andrew?
I like pulling the banner program because then we could approve the fee schedule today.
Yes.
And then I really like just as long as we put somewhere on there, like we'll negotiate separate maintenance agreements for rentals. So that if somebody's looking at Brainerd for a tournament and just stumbles on our website, they can say, oh, yeah, we'll get in contact, see if that'll work for us. So, yeah, I like that verbiage over a set rate and then just pull in the banner program so we can hammer this out today.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of that as well, because again, I know the mayor's worked relatively hard on figuring out a solution to that that might actually be advantageous. So, I'd like to pull the planner program. I do like the flexibility for those outside agencies coming in. If they want to run a bigger event, something like that, I want to have flexibility and want to be able to promote that sort of flexibility through our amenities. So, I'm totally in agreement with Andrew.
I want to mention the benches. Sorry, I didn't know that was still an option for people. I thought with like our park, all our plans we were making, maybe we have too many benches or because that makes it seem like we can just put a bench anywhere. I mean, is that an option still? I thought we had talked about changing that when we did all of those plans.
Yeah, and I think we had conversations about the benches specifically, like, what is the cost of that? Because, at some point we have to replace them.
Yeah, not that
I
I'm
wasn't
all
sure if it
for
was,
it.
you're right, not that you're against letting people pay
I
for,
want to have people remember their loved ones by a bench, but
I do think,
I thought we had talked about kind of, because then once we lay the slab, then it's like we have a slab and no bench.
I think it was a conversation about maybe making sure that we're getting people's information, and that if the time comes for maintenance on that bench, it's destroyed or something like that, that the city isn't being held responsible for replacing said bench. That the maintenance or removal, we'll remove it when the time comes, but, we're reaching out to, again, the community groups and people who have paid money for these benches to do the maintenance and replacement. Paul?
I thought there was a policy in place regarding the bench placements and things, and does it cover the future removal of that once?
I don't believe that the policy specifically says how long a bench is to be in place.
It just
Mostly because it
dictates
probably
where
could
to place
depend.
it, and it has to be approved by city staff.
Correct.
That
It does say
makes sense.
try not to put it out on an island, that it should be nearby a walkway where possible. I suppose it's really tough to say like a life cycle of how long, because you get one that's in full sun versus one that's in shade. That can change how long one's going to last quite drastically. So it's tough to say that, every one's guaranteed for 10 years or something like that. So that would be a little bit difficult for us to have. But to your point, whether or not that would be your responsibility to replace, that's something that we can include in the policy is that becomes your...
I think we're just at least giving folks an option, because again, we're talking about community groups and the JCs and those pavilions and things like that. Like if they want to go in, instead of having us tear it down, if they want to raise funds or put their own time into fixing these fixtures, not an issue, right? I understand you're paying for a bench, to have at whatever cost is quoted, but we just don't want the city to have to maintain these, and I think that was kind of part of that conversation. So we just,
Give them the option, right?
Yeah,
We can either remove it, it's past its life cycle.
or, if you want to re-up, here's the conversation, and just make sure that we set expectations for folks that are purchasing these benches, that when the time comes, it's going to be on you to replace it or, rehab it.
Could I ask for some quick clarification? Does the park board want to include any kind of a minimum, I'll say a guarantee? The reason why I asked that question is if I install it today and a week from now somebody walks and throws their boot through it, maybe a strong boot, I guess, but if for some reason they vandalize it, spray paint all over it, and we're not able to remove the spray paint or in some way vandalize it to the point where it's not easily repairable, it's a complete replacement. After a month, is that still their responsibility? So that's why I want to ask for that clarification. Is that something that the park board wants to include? Is a minimum time frame, or is it as it is your responsibility from day one.
I mean,
We don't typically have a problem
our
with them.
fixture, I mean, are we covered if vandalism hits that at all? I mean, in any way, shape, or form? Like if somebody goes down, breaks it, I mean, weather breaks it, is our bench covered under some form of insurance or reimbursement if it gets destroyed?
Because it's in our facilities, it probably would be covered under a property in the open, but it wouldn't hit our deductible.
Okay.
Our deductible
Makes
is
sense.
5,000.
Right.
These are 1,500 per.
Fair enough. Yeah, because I know, I mean, even in Rotary, the slab on that one park near the river is graffitied to all get out. Well, not recently, but, has in the past and things like that. So, yeah, to your point, I mean, we could see that based on placement. So there are some more high-risk benches. I guess, yeah, throw that out to you guys for comments.
I mean, the biggest thing, the reason I brought it up is because now we require that slab.
Right.
And then it's like, so it's good, so we have a policy in place that they have to talk to us, obviously, we install it, so we have to approve where they want to place it. And usually, I don't know if that comes to us or not, I mean, trust staff to probably, pick it, but like, it's on there, so I just wanted to bring that up. I don't know if we need to add a year, I don't want to throw it out there, if we keep talking about graffiti on benches, all of a sudden.
Right, yeah, I'll just jinx it, yeah.
So I don't know if we need to get that, like, in the weeds with, like, after 10 days, it's, but I just don't want a bunch of, like, random slabs if something does happen. That's why I just want to be aware of how many benches we're placing. I guess that's my biggest thing is, so we're smart about it, which we would be, so. That was all I was
I mean, I
pointing out.
think we could give a grace period for 5 years. I mean, these benches, they're all synthetic materials. They're pretty durable. I mean, to Jesse's point, if someone goes and runs into it the day after it's put in, I don't think the expectation would be that the city would not replace it, right? I mean, they've made an investment into a park to add an amenity that everyone's going to benefit from. I think the public purpose is there, and we can come to the table with some sort of guarantee for those situations that may arise.
Yeah, I think 5 years is very serviceable. I mean, yes, Mike.
Just what we used to have is, it was 30, I forget the exact years, but on the bench, we then contacted that family and said, hey, your bench is, it served its lifetime. Do you want to continue, or do you want to we can give you the remnants of it, and then you can do whatever you would like with it. So we had that, and then for the trees, for the life of that tree, then we would say, hey, this tree has a lot of disease, we got to cut it down. Do you want your plaque back? Do you want to redo another plaque at another tree? And we just had that. So I can review the policy on that. And to your point, we had X number of benches. After we met that, then it was like, well, this year we only have so many benches that we're doing. And then after that, you have to do a tree. We got a lot of trees, right? And so we would do that approach with it. And again, the life cycle of the bench, vandalism, we just took care of. It's pretty minimal. We have a lot of those board materials at the shop, and the guys could just sort of knock that out. We get a little vandalism, but again, there's always anomalies out there. But that's what I'm going to review that policy, and I'll bring back something next time regarding that.
And I think we could leave, certainly on, at least for this year's fee schedule, we could still leave these on here. I mean, I don't think our bench inventory is egregious as it sits, but yeah, I mean, and I don't know on an annual basis how many benches we're putting out there and how many slabs we're replacing. But yeah, I mean, I think that's something, for the future, yeah, we like to have a pretty good policy that, again, public purpose side of things, yeah, it helps, so, yeah, maybe a 5-year guarantee, at least for this fee schedule. Like if anyone orders one this year, we're going to guarantee it for 5 years, and then we can have a conversation about it later. But yeah, let's try to start taking that approach to benches and trees. That sounds wonderful, and just have a general idea, because we do know how many benches are in our system. Yes, so it's out there somewhere. But yeah, we can maybe come to that cap at some point in our lifetime and make a decision on, we've reached that point. But yeah, I think that's totally fine. So right now, removing the banner program from the fee schedule, taking an approach to the benches, and I guess in turn the trees if we do reach an inventory of that level. Tournament schedule being a little bit more flexible according to staff and private conversations about and negotiating for bigger events and other agents. So. Any other questions, comments, or concerns on the fee schedule?
I can attempt a motion on that.
If you want to attempt a motion, that sounds wonderful.
Limited just to the fee schedule.
Yeah, very good.
I'd move to remove the field banner program from the draft fee schedule, then add a line item to our field rentals that reduced rates for self-maintenance are available on request.
Second.
Very good. Motion and a second. Any other discussion on the motion for the fee schedule? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. We have a fee schedule. New business, we're going to approve the change order of the number 3 Parks ARPA project. Jesse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So staff is recommending approval of a change order 3 for the ARPA projects that is attached. We're essentially completed with the projects. We're at this point really waiting for the grass to grow, which will be in spring. But a lot of this was kind of a lot of the items that we needed to get the project constructed per the plan. So some of this were items that weren't included in the plans, like the concrete steps that were shown in the plans that there wasn't an item for. Some of the topsoil and excavation, there were some overages there. So we wanted to just kind of wrap all of that up into this change order. What we also included in this change order was some of the items that we removed from the scope because we knew we were going to have some of these quantity overruns and some of these additional items. Us as staff, we're trying to be a little proactive to try and make sure that we're doing our best to stay within the budget. We removed a few items. We talked a little bit about the handrail on the steps to the beach. That was an item that we can have fabricated and done with our maintenance in-house. The handicap signs, that's something that we can do with our maintenance staff as well. And then it got pretty late in the season for the paint in the parking lot. That was also another thing that we said, we do painting on our own anyways with our maintenance staff. We can remove that part of the scope anyway. It was so late in the season at this point anyway, the quality would have been questionable anyways. So we removed a handful of things, which gave us a handful of different cost savings. So overall, when you take all of the different things that we had, overruns and adds, but taking away some of the subtractions and stuff, a little over 21,000 overrun in the change order, which revises the contract to be about 478, almost 479,000. If you review the final measured quantities, again, we're not quite finished up, but we're expecting the final amount to be about 475. So getting some of those cost savings, we would be a little bit under the revised contract, not the original bid award, but the revised contract. So you include these change orders and stuff like that. So a little bit under, but again, that's trying to balance a lot of these different things. And we'll have a little bit of a discussion on the next item too, of how we try to balance all of the different things together between all the different contracts that we had, but also with the construction. But staff ultimately is recommending approval of the change order 3 as presented.
Very good. Thank you, Jesse. Questions on the change order? Comments on the change order? Motion on the change order?
I'll make a motion to approve change order 3 as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. The change order is approved. Moving on to the approval of the WSB amendment request for the Parks ARPA project. Jesse.
I'll be recusing myself of this item.
Recusal from Paul Sandy. Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we are requesting approval of the amendment request from WSB. So they were required to do some additional staking and observation time just to properly get the project constructed to what we were expecting. from the beginning, we were trying to be as measured as we could, understanding it was going to be a very tight budget. So we were trying to be about as measured as we could about how much time WSB had to expend hours out on the project to inspect, do staking, because obviously every hour is a certain amount of dollars. So we're trying to be as measured as we can, but also make sure that they're out an appropriate amount of time, that we get the project constructed to the appropriate quality that we're expecting. So trying to do a little bit of a balance there. Now, understand that, when they first bid the project, they have an assumption of how much time, based on what we're all thinking, that they're going to have to spend out there. Based on a lot of the discussions between our staff, so we were in very close contact with both the contractor and WSB. Through those discussions, we felt like a few more extra hours were needing to be spent out there to appropriately stake as well as observe some of the tasks, especially out on the beach, but kind of throughout all three different projects. So this isn't something that was unclear to staff. We were in very close conversations throughout the whole project, and we just wanted to make sure that they spent the appropriate amount of hours needed to get everything constructed and observed. We also don't want the contractor out there, say winging it, but kind of constructing it without good guidance from either our staff or WSB staff either. So with that, the amendment is totaling $64.80, which amends the total contract up to $27,254. So this was actually kind of the fun part for me. So I got to start pulling this contract together with, now that we have kind of final numbers for the construction contract, with the Kiwanis tree clearing, with the Woodseth contract, we started putting all of them together. And out of the $575,000 budget, it looks like we're going to land, if we approve the amendment, right at about $576,000. So that was actually a pretty good result to me, is that we came in that close, as tight as we were, and all the efforts and all the unexpected stuff that came in through construction. So I was actually pretty happy. Speaking with finance, the remaining $1,200 or so of the budget can be absorbed through some other capital savings elsewhere from this year. So staff is recommending approval of the contract amendment for WSB in the amount of $6,480.
Very good. Thank you, Jesse. Questions on the amendment? Comments on the amendment? So if we don't approve this, we fly under? No, pretty darn close. I mean, we've, been sitting up here 2 years. We're pretty darn close to target. So, we are looking for a motion on this amendment. Andrew.
I think I just have a comment, and I'm not terribly familiar with construction, so this is a very naive perspective, I think. But I feel like there's a little bit of a trend now, and maybe this is just how construction works, Jesse, that we get to the end of a project and it's like, oh, they spent a lot more time on site than we thought. And we had the same thing with Lyman P. White. And it's kind of boiled down to the same thing both times, that, oh, the contractor didn't work like we expected. Right? For Lyman P. White, it was they did way more pours than we thought. And here it was they needed more staking and they weren't doing as much field fitting as they were expected to. Is that just how this goes? I feel like we're hearing kind of the same story over and over from WSB, and is that?
Kind of. So it's a lot like when you have a plumber come out and work. They give you an estimate. Ultimately, they're going to bill you for the hours they spend out in your house doing the work. And that's really what we're getting billed at from WSB, is they're billing us for the amount of hours they're spending on the work. When they give us a proposal at the beginning of the project, they're making a lot of assumptions. Is they're assuming that they're going to have to work for so many days, so many hours a day. Sometimes it's, do we need to be out there full time? Do they need to be out there part time? So they're making a lot of assumptions. Some of them are correct and some of them aren't. And it really depends on the contractor too. It could vary. To your point about tests, if you're assuming that they're going to do, X amount of yards per day, and that's going to equal this many tests. Well, if they progress just a little bit less each day, that means X amount more days of pours, which means X amount more tests. So just little things like that can change a lot of those assumptions, and that all of a sudden increases a lot of the time that a WSP or any consulting engineer would have to spend out on the contract. So really what we're trying to do is compensate them for the hours that they spent on the contract. Now, to your point of coming, after the fact here, it's a lot like some of the change order 3. We could have essentially pulled them off the project and said, don't spend any more hours on the project, but that probably wouldn't have been the most responsible thing, is to tell DeChantel, hey, stop, we don't have any more hours for WSB right now. We don't want you to do any work until we get an amendment approved with our park board. We want to keep the progress moving, especially as we were getting really close to the winter season and the end of construction. So that's why we wanted to continue to work with them. Our job as staff is obviously to make sure that we're being responsible, and they're being responsible with that. The assumptions, were they appropriate? Should we have seen this coming? Are the hours that they're spending out there appropriate? Or are they just kind of, I want to say sitting on a shovel, but, are the hours justified? And that's our job. And like I mentioned in here, we were in a lot of really close conversations with both the contractor and WSB, especially on this one, knowing how close we were on the budget. We did not want to expend as many hours as possible. Or at least maybe a better way to put that is try and limit as many hours as possible for WSB to be on the project. So we even had conversations with DeChantel as, do you really need, X staked this to this extent, and having those conversations with the contractor to try and limit the amount of expense as much as possible. So that was a lot of the effort that we had to spend out there, probably more than I would have really had a lot of time for this construction season, but knowing how close we were going to be on the budget, we wanted to make sure that we did our due diligence to try and limit that as much as possible. But so to your point, it's kind of part of the construction process is we need to make sure that we have the construction observation folks there when they need to be there, but not unnecessarily or wastefully. And that's our job as the contract owner, is to make sure we're following up with that and making sure that we're following with WSB of when they're out there, when it's appropriate. But that's the other part of it, is sometimes it is after the fact, because we don't want to stop the construction process either, because we could have same thing with like change order 3. We could have told DeChantel to absolutely hold everything until we get all of this stuff wrapped up, but then we would have been stuck here, and now everything's kind of frozen, and we wouldn't have been able to progress with the project until spring. So some of it is a little bit of a balance of what do we need to really hold up on versus can we approve this and keep the progress moving, and then talk with our board. And I think we've been trying to be pretty transparent with the park board of knowing that there was going to be some overruns, and we discussed that at the last meeting, as well as prep that some of this was going to come out through a change order in the future of some of the overruns and some of that discussion as well. Knowing that we didn't have the exact numbers, but we were going to be very, very close on the budget. A lot of explanation. I apologize, but trying to explain a lot of what we go through with construction. So.
Mike.
Just to add to that, most architects, engineers they'll absorb some fees because they know the local municipality is their bread and butter. I have never had, in my experience in doing a lot of different projects, that an architect and engineer firms, typically what they look at those numbers before they submit them to the local agency. Is this justified? Is it backed up by documents of, yes, this contractor was doing A, B, and C? Because they too don't like change orders. They have to pay their individuals, but I have never seen, I'll take that back. We had one company that did do some wrongdoing, but that is so far in between. And I haven't dove into this project, but know that I will be looking at more projects, but I haven't seen an agency abuse the change order process. And I think WSB is a strong firm here in the local valley. So I would recommend also.
Yeah, just to tie into that, I do know of more than a handful of examples. WSB is one, but other other firms is looking at opportunities where, do we need to include this with our billing, or do they just absorb it? And I've seen that multiple of times where they just absorb some of these costs. I don't know if that was the case in here. I'm sure that there's probably some in there, but it happens a lot.
Any other comments or questions for Jesse or Mike on the amendment?
Move to approve the WSB amendment for 6480.
Second that.
Motion and a second. Further discussion on the motion. Hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. We are amending. We'll move on to 7C, the discussion on the J.C.'s Park grading plans. Jesse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm not going to, hopefully you had a chance to read that. I don't know if I want to read the whole thing. So I kind of gave a little bit of background between the pleasure rink and how that design came from Woodseth and how we made some adjustments before we presented it to the park board. And same thing, how we determined the grading of the soccer field. So what I'll really kind of focus my comments here is the pleasure rink. To make adjustments on there, I kind of laid out some of the cost estimates. And again, some of this is basing the assumption that either the same contractor or another contractor would do it under the same pricing, which is not a guarantee. But to raise the bottom up 1 foot, you're looking at a potential cost of about $7,200. To raise it up 1.5 feet, to have a depth of only 0.5 foot, it's roughly about $14,000 or a little over that. Which also you have to factor in, you have to reseed that after you filled it in. So there's another cost to that. So you have to remobilize the seeding contractor plus the material and the work of that. So I included that in there. It was when staff saw that design, the 2 foot design, I want to clarify. So I think it was maybe misunderstood, or maybe it wasn't as clear because maybe I had a different understanding as the park board. I don't think our staff was intending to fill the rink 2 feet deep. I think that's a big challenge for us anyways, like physically. So I included that photo in here, and I think that was kind of what we had envisioned, what would be done with our staff with that pleasure rink is that we would fill just a few inches, much like we do at other rinks, is we fill a few inches, and then the remaining, I'll say 1.5 feet, it becomes almost like a natural berm barrier seating, say natural boards, but it's sloped, but that it was intended to be more kind of to keep the area with restrained, I guess. Be a good word to put it, I guess. It was never our intent to fill it 2 feet deep. It would have taken probably all of 2 months for staff to be able to fill it that deep, and a lot of really good weather. But that, and to the point of being able to drain it by only having a few inches of ice in there, obviously comes springtime, once everything thaws out, it's going to take very little time for that to drain out once the ground thaws and the groundwater level goes away, compared to had it been 2 feet deep. So I wanted to make sure I clarified that was not my understanding of the intent of having the 2 foot pleasure rink. Of what Woodseth included with the design was that it would be filled 2 feet deep, that we were going to fill it just a little bit, something similar to what's in the photo there. The other part in here is the soccer field and flipping the drainage to go towards the south of the drainage ditch. I included here some of the work I did to accommodate what that would entail. It's not complete because it doesn't include all the sloping that has to go into it. A little bit, I've referenced a little bit of it. But you would have to raise that north end quite a bit to be able to flip the drainage to the south while also keeping the south high enough that it's not encroaching on the ditch. And I know that was kind of one of the park board's key pieces, was bringing that soccer field high enough that it's not that low in that drainage way, or at least close to it. So when I did my calculations, I kind of kept that bottom corner up about a quarter foot. To do that and keep the same slope, which was pretty minimal, that 1.4%, you have to raise that north end about 5 feet or a little bit more than 5 feet, which creates a lot of other problems with sloping and some other pieces. So that's where I included in here. My recommendation is not to try and flip that going the other direction. But again, this kind of the other thought was the natural topography of the area does try and follow that be southeast to northwest topography. We're very confident that we're not going to have a drainage issue. It's sheet flows. What doesn't infiltrate into the grass area will sheet flow across the trail, much like your sidewalk in front of your home or anything else. I don't foresee there's being a big ponding issue or freezing issue. If there is any kind of standing, I mean, obviously our maintenance is intending to keep the trail and access clear. If we have to do other maintenance with it, that's what we'll do. That's our job as maintenance, but I don't foresee there being a standing water issue.
Very good. Thank you, Jesse. Questions on the discussion item?
Yeah, I think, from the flipping the field standpoint, just looking at the site prior to this, you can go on GIS and look at contours, and Jesse's right. That site has historically flowed in the direction that it's currently flowing. To go back and flip, to go back and flip the site now would, being that we already have improvements in place, number one, so we have a trail really close to the north end and the west side. You would need a substantial grade adjustment on that north end, which your soccer field is going to be significantly higher than your trail, number one. The cost to do so is substantial. As engineers and looking at this site, you're trying to fit improvements that match the same drainage conditions at what existed to minimize the amount of earthwork you have to do. And I think that's what Woodseth's, overall goal was here, is that you're trying to minimize the amount of earthwork, not trying to flip a site from going in an opposite direction that it historically has gone. So I think, leaving it as is and evaluating it, and let's see, over this first year, keep an eye on it over the winter months and see if we have a trail problem, like Jesse kind of inferred. I would think that normal snow practice and maintenance will keep that trail clear. I kind of inferred this earlier, and Jesse did too, about the natural infiltrating soils that we have in Brainerd. Now, this site was filled with a lot of topsoil, but our topsoil, even in the Brainerd area, is like black sand. It's literally going to infiltrate very quickly, and I don't suspect that, even though the soccer field is graded in that direction, the amount of rain that it would take to actually have runoff from this site would have to be pretty substantial, and it's going to likely infiltrate before it even gets to a point that it's going to be crossing the trail or entering into the wetland. It's all green space. That's what our soils in this area do, is they take on water. We're very blessed in that. If we were down in the metro or somewhere in the southern part of the state, this would probably be a lot bigger issue, because their clay soils down there don't allow for any infiltration. And so I've looked at this and re-looked at it. I honestly do not see any problems with the way it is right now. And like I said, if there is problems, we can address those, I think, if they do become an issue. But I just don't foresee it, honestly.
Awesome, because that everything you said was like a different language. Like grading and the piping, and I was like, thank goodness.
Somebody else has got a handle on this. Yeah, I mean, and to think, and on the point of the pleasure ring too, I think, to see the vision, I guess, a little bit more, as it being more of a defined footprint for the rink instead of us just kind of hosing off an area and letting it freeze. I can see the thought behind the 2 foot depth. Mike.
Just to piggyback too on that pleasure rink, in the summertime, now when mom and dad are watching Johnny plays soccer, the other little one will be rolling down that hill on that pleasure rink. So natural topography is a huge play area, and I think it might be a great design. Again, we're the maintenance staff, they're on it, and they are going to be looking at this during the winter months, what it's going to be like. We're going to be next year, that pond is going to be active. So what is it going to be like? So we already talked to Tony, and he's going to be on that too. So I think it might be a good blessing, and maybe this is going to be, people are really going to like it in the sense that they can just sit down on the pleasure rink and just like plop on like a bench or on the side of the hill. It may be a good design. And again, staff wise, if it's not, we can fix that.
Other questions, comments, or concern on the discussion item for JCs? Andrew.
I think the only thing I'm a little skeptical of still is how close the grade is to the sidewalk, like the very northeast corner of the pleasure rink. But certainly, let's see it play out, and if we want to add a more gradual slope there in the future. But yeah, I think let's see how it goes. And I do appreciate your input, Paul, on the soccer field, because that makes way less sense to me. So yeah, I think. Glad you're on the board, Paul. Good to me.
Very good. Any further discussion on the park item? Jesse.
I just want to point out one thing that's not necessarily shown in the plan. Laura, can you go to the plan really quick? There is an existing walkway that's not shown in the plan that goes from the existing warming house that's about halfway between the two walkways. So that would be a pretty good access into the pleasure rink, because it is, to your point, Andrew, that it is pretty close to the walkway. They won't have to go far from that existing walk to get to the pleasure rink.
Very good. Anything else to discuss? All right, we'll move on to the public forum. Time allocated for citizens to bring matters not on the agenda to the attention of the board. We'll open the public forum at 4:52. Look out to the audience. And we will close the public forum at 4:52 and move on to staff reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So included a few different items. Sorry, the rec report's a little light, but it is the lighter part of the season. The pond hockey, we're going to get the registration opened. We are planning to administer this in-house this year. So the registration is planned to get opened up here shortly. Warming house attendance, we are advertising that job now. And hopefully we will get enough people to staff those out. This year we're looking at hiring at the higher wage, the higher seasonal wage that we discussed during the budget process. So that is what we're advertising for this year's warming house attendance.
Question on pond hockey. We had the Y run that last year, is that correct?
Yes,
Do
sir.
we have any information on the success of the program through the Y last year?
We didn't have pond hockey last year.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot it was a heat wave. My bad. So, yeah.
We had an equipment pickup and drop
I
off.
walked outside today and forgot that summer existed. So,
I think they actually did have a practice, if I remember correctly, but
Yeah,
I think that's
okay,
about as far
very
as
good.
that got.
Yeah, I forgot about the absolute historic heat wave. Okay, very good. Yep. Sorry about that.
No problem. Weather looks great in the forecast. So, staff has already started working on flooding rinks. Hopefully the weather holds out and we're going to keep getting ice, and in the next few weeks we'll actually have some things skatable here shortly, but we'll see how the temperatures continue. You never know what it'll do in a
Yes,
couple weeks.
how quickly as a Minnesotan do you forget you were blessed with the warmest winter on record?
Goodness. But let's keep your fingers crossed for a regular temperature year this year. We can have skatable ice again. Rent.fund, we had final rental numbers for the year. Did include what their report was for the revenue share. Not as high as we were kind of expecting, I guess, or projecting, but part of that will be continuing to try and market that. I know the previous rec specialist was trying to do a little bit of marketing with like the photo contest. Didn't get a lot of traction, but continuing to try and do things like the photo contest and any other ways to get more attention to that. I think our beach improvements are going to be a big attraction to not only just that park in general, but that beach area, and having the kayak rental there will help be an amenity for that. So just wanted to make sure I included that in the report. You have the maintenance report. We talked a little bit that the folks are moving into flooding rinks now. Projects report, talked a lot about the ARPA projects that essentially were done at this point. If you haven't been down to the beach, you haven't seen the gigantic shade frames. Those things are huge. So you understand why the concrete footings that got put in there are as big as they are. Those frames are gigantic. Obviously, we're not going to put up the fabric shades during the winter, obviously to protect them. So we took possession of those, but come springtime, we'll get those put back up when the conditions are there. And then at this point, we're essentially waiting for all the grass seed to take, which will probably be next spring. We've spoke with our IT group about helping revise our campground maps. So we're hopefully going to have the campground maps updated and ready to go for reservations for the 2025 campground season. And I believe we included that updated number in our campground host agreement. So we should be just about ready to go. And I believe the Department of Health approved all of the permits and stuff like that. So we'll just have to get the updated permit for 2025. So we should be all set to go for the campground as well, as long as everything grows just fine. So, and then the pavilion, I did get an update that the temperatures just got too cold for the painting. So they're going to hold off until spring for the pavilions. With that, I don't think I had anything else from a project standpoint, unless you had anything else to add.
Well, we just installed those the 3 locations on the cameras. Did we brief on that? I briefed with Chief Davis to make sure that his staff was, hey, where do you guys look at it from the perspective of law enforcement? Where would you like the cameras to be pointed? So I involved with him and Troy with just the placement of those cameras. So it's, what was it, Kiwanis, Lyman, and then the bridge. So those 3 parks are getting cameras, and JC already got a camera by the chief police, so that was nice that we got a bonus one with there, so it was good.
Very good. Well, with that, I guess we'll move on to board member reports. We'll start. Oh, yes, Andrew.
2 questions.
Yes.
The vandalism at JC's, was somebody like doing donuts on the?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right after they seeded.
Love that.
And then they actually put up their cameras, they moved the barricades, and then they actually caught some individuals, so it actually worked, so it was really good.
Oh,
We got them. Ladies
amazing.
and gentlemen, we got them.
And then, where's the process in hiring a replacement for Haley?
Yes, we did go through we had a lot of applicants, a lot of individuals met the minimum qualifications, but there was like almost 30 individuals in that group. So Jesse, Brittany, and I, we reviewed them all. We had to narrow it down just because, I mean, that was just way too many. We narrowed it down to 8, and we made our selection, and that individual has accepted the position, and they're doing their 2 weeks' notice with that also. We have our park admin person starting December 26th, or no, 23rd, that Monday, just so that she can get started with that. So yes, we're moving forth with that. So it's really exciting.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions on the maintenance report? Now we will move on to board member reports. We'll start with Paul.
Have we met since Halloween? I don't think we have.
Right before.
Yeah, it was right before.
Yeah, well, went up to North Brainerd during Halloween. The park there was a lot of commotion going on in the park. My 2-year-old son loved it, loved all the fog machines. There was a extreme amount of fog, loud music, and he really enjoyed that. My infant didn't so much, but lot of ghosts and ghouls kind of traveling around North Brainerd again. So always, we actually we like to trick or treat around Northtown because it's close to our house. But we like to go into North Brainerd just to see the sights and all the people kind of walking around. So great event. Love having the North Brainerd, the guy that puts all the speakers up and everything. He was up here before us. What a great thing that he does there.
Right. Yeah. Well, hopefully somebody can help him out so he's not there for 2 days setting that up next time around. But yeah, no, that was the kind of same feedback that I had about that. I don't know, speaking to the resident perspective, but the whole thing felt like a success. So very, very unique experience that again, I hope he continues to bring that forward. So that was awesome.
That's all I had though.
Oh, very good. Yeah, I'm really actually excited. We got the cameras up underneath the bridge again. Just the highest traffic vandalism area we've got seemingly in the entire system. So really excited to hear that. Little bit of a lower conversation about pickleball as the winter months have crept up on us. So I am still very much interested in seeing one of those Gregory Park courts turned into pickleball. So continuing to work with community members to see how we can put some money together to get that done. And again, even talking with Mike on other options to have it be maybe more modular, tennis and pickleball, looking at surface options and things like that, but working still closely with members of the community to get that done. JD also had brought forth some information about it as well, so kind of top of mind, but moving into winter, now it's really just about finding some money. So that is all I have, Andrew.
Yeah, huge shout out to Josh who put on that Halloween event in the park. It was the best smelling fog I've ever.
Yeah, it was. It was very. I don't know what it was, but it kind of made my eyes burn a little bit, though, so I don't know exactly what was in it. But
yeah, that was a blast. Hopefully Kelly didn't mind too much because I think half the speakers are pointed at his house.
Well, when we visited Kelly's house, he was sitting in his porch in a chair, having some sort of beverage, and we're not sure what it was, but I'm sure he was enjoying it.
Yeah, that's all I got for my report.
Care?
I just want us not to forget about the beach and the water and the weeds and all that jazz. So if we're talking pickleball for the summer, let's talk about the beach for the summer too, because I think we want to have like a big grand opening of our beach, but not to be able to have people swimming in our beach, not so great. So I just don't want to lose sight of that. And I obviously know that it involves money as well. So do we have a fundraiser for the beach and for pickleball, or like I don't know what we do.
Let's talk to the ski loons, see if they want to
Right.
help us
Maybe.
revitalize our beach. Mike, yeah.
So would the board like to have a grand opening I love grand openings just
Absolutely.
because any chance for me, my philosophy is any chance for a celebration, do it. And the public is starving for that, especially from a municipality perspective. And I think that would be, to your point, maybe we look at some community members, the loons, maybe they could help out with some beach stuff. We get a permit and so forth and look at that. But yeah, so thank you for bringing that up because that would it just is helpful for public information to get out, whether it's a street, whether it's a park. You need to do public engagement at every level, just so that they, we already have a lot of individuals looking at government as, not so positive. So anytime that we can, I'm a big component of that. So thank you.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, that beach and that water has been yucky pretty much my entire life. So if we change that, and we can flip the script, because I think that is a very prominent understanding and belief of a lot of folks about that water in that beach area, especially over the course of now of my adult life. That beach just does not get that much usage. So I am with you 100%. Like, I would really like to pursue the cleanup and that sort of thing that they discussed before we open that park, because again, yeah, the sentiment has always been that that water's nasty. So we'd like to turn the heads on that if we could.
I can't have a grand opening if they can't go swimming.
Yeah, that's
Right.
true.
We
Yep.
all need to jump in the water and they can follow then. If we're
Yeah.
not jumping in, no one else.
Nobody's
that-
gonna. Yeah.
After you.
You know, like, no, really, I mean.
No, really, no, really.
And I had no idea until Troy presented, and I guess I'm naive to think that no one swam over there. So like, why do we put all this money into this beach that no one can swim in? So that's
Yeah.
like, we really, I feel like we really need to work on that.
And I am 100% with you because as soon as Troy brought it up, I was like, yeah, I haven't lived in that area since I was a really young lad, so 5 or 6. But even at 5 or 6, my family didn't let me go into that water. So it's kind of one of those things where the public view of that is probably pretty nasty. Again, who is responsible for cleaning that up? I don't really know, but I mean, if we can try to do something about it, and again, outreach to even the loons. I mean, that's their beach. They operate there, and then people come to see them there. So, what can they do? What can other groups do? And what can we do to find a way to get that cleaned up would be outstanding. So, I appreciate you bringing that up.
And lastly, I just wanted to commend the board for, Andrew shared your, all the amenities and the improvement plan and that just the replacement cost of all of that. That was a lot of work that you guys did on that and just to be commended. So thank you for that also.
Well, I believe we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.
By God.